That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Port Authority, the directorial debut of Danielle Lessovitz, which premiered at the 2019 Cannes Film Festival in Un Certain Regard. It's being released May 28, 2021, courtesy of Momentum Pictures.
All right. Overall, there is a lot about this film I really liked.
Same. It had both the pleasure and misfortune of premiering at Cannes, which is a difficult crowd to play to, especially for a first-time filmmaker. But the importance of this was being there was kind of like that lesbian Kenyan film Rafiki, which also premiered in a certain regard. But overall, there's more that I liked than disliked.
So the basic story is about this 20-year-old white boy named Paul, who's played by
Fionn Whitehead,
who I know from Voyagers.
He's also in Dunkirk.
Okay. He shows up to start his new life, thinking that his sister is supposed to pick him up, but she's not there. So he ends up attempting to sleep on a subway train when he gets beat up and robbed. A man on the train named Lee helps him.
Played by McCaul Lombardi.
And then basically says I live in this homeless shelter, but I kind of run the show, so you can stay here and I'll help you out. So he does. Lee runs he works for some slumlord, harassing tenants who are behind on their payments or whatnot, and then collecting money or taking their valuables. So Paul starts working for him. One day he meets he's walking around and sees a group of people who are part of the ball scene. So they're out on the street voguing.
At the Port Authority bus terminal.
And he sees a woman named Y, W-Y-E.
Played by Leyna Bloom.
And he's smitten. So he sees her again, follows her into a ball.
Well, he sees Tekay, who's a young man that's also staying in this shelter, and he noticed that this man was part of Y's group, so he follows him one night into a ball.
And then gets the attention of Y. She has dinner with him and says I'll be here this day if you want to see me again. And they strike up
a rapport.
Yeah, a romantic sort of connection. He has very strong feelings for her when at a point he finds out she's trans. And he doesn't react negatively, he's just upset she didn't tell him. But ultimately he comes around because his feelings for her are real. But then she's turned off by him because he's lied about some things we'll get into. But ultimately it would appear that they maintain their relationship because... So, if for people who don't know about the ball scene, it's often it involves families. So people's chosen families. So Y's chosen family all live in an apartment.
The McQueens.
And at the end, because earlier on in the film, Paul asks Y, can I be part of the family? And she says no, because if we're dating, you wouldn't date your sister, so we can't be in the same house and date. So at the very end of the film, after she seems like she's just over him because he's too much drama, he shows up to an audition to join the family as he just wants to care for her and be in her proximity. And she seems to accept that. The end.
Yes, there you go.
Okay. All right. What did I like about the film? The two leads.
Yeah, both I think were pretty good.
Yes. Paul is played by Fionn.
Fionn Whitehead.
I really like him because he's not your average, young white boy actor. They all have a similar look because he's, kind of petite, and I thought he had a really interesting look. The way he plays his character, he seems so vulnerable.
He seems to be quite often on the edge of a full-blown panic attack.
Yeah, I really liked his portrayal, and I just like seeing that because he's no one's action lead, but I really liked him. And then the actor playing Y, I just feel like she's gonna be so big because she's so watchable on screen.
I think she has the distinction now because this premiered at Cannes as the first trans actor in a leading role to have a film premiere in the program, which seems unreal to me, but...
Yeah. You know, it doesn't help, it doesn't hurt that she's gorgeous, but I just thought like she's so watchable on screen. So I really enjoyed the two of them on screen together and their story and how it transpired.
It was compelling enough to make me want to believe in the world where their relationship is possible.
Yes. What didn't work for me? Okay, so Lee, who's like this super cut, you know, handsome guy, is super homophobic. Like super homophobic. And the guys who work for him doing this like landlord harassing thing are also very homophobic. And that aspect of the story is just hit so hard. Like there could be a drinking game for every time someone says the word like it's just excessive, which I think makes the film feel dated
because they're so, especially in the world which these people occupy with a lot of disenfranchised folks. I mean, he's the real predator, I think, Lee as a character, but
or chaser as they say.
But immediately upon his first interaction with Paul, brings up kind of queer panic situation, and you know that age-old stereotype about how gay men are predatorial, but he's the predator. And I think that this group, this own family of Lees that he's culled, I think they probably are homophobic, but I think it's more situational as it comes up, the context. I think the main conversation we had is how these people would probably be more transphobic than, like, it's all part of the same thing, but I think, yeah.
So when Paul first goes to the ball, when he follows the character Tekay into the ball to try to find why, it's not the house mother, but another member of Wife's house sees Paul and it's like, what are you doing here? You're not invited here. The outside world, like in this city, New York City, I'm presuming it's set in 2020, 2021.
Well, 2019 is when it was released.
Oh, okay. Like the outside world is for you.
Mm-hmm.
So this space we're in is for us. So it's like having that understanding and being told that in the story to then have these characters be so homophobic in a city, in an area where everywhere you look, there's a queer person, a trans person, just seems so out of place and so excessive.
That point, I think, needed to be made about their group, but it also needs to be more subtle.
And what made more sense, just with like statistics and acts of violence against the LGBT community, it felt like that specific group of characters who were so homophobic really should have been transphobic and made comments that would make Paul feel like he could never come out as saying that he has feelings for a trans woman. But these characters don't ever talk about that. They just talk about all the time. So the disconnect between that and how, I mean, we can presume that they would not approve of Paul dating Y, but I just thought that really took me out and made me feel like this film was something that would have been more appropriate when I was 20, like in 1999. Like, you know.
Sure. But what I did like, you know, the title, the overarching metaphor for this this place of transience that's also full of both hope and despair. For some reason I thought, well, not for some reason, there's the lead character in Madeline Olnick's Foxy Merkins, which is a comedy, lives in the bathroom at the Port Authority bus terminal, and that film's worth checking out if you haven't. But I liked that a lot, and this is the second time I've seen it, and I think for the first time it dawned on me that we're working with two different families, two different chosen families, one who's homophobic and one who's a trans family, or a family of LGBTQ youths, and how they are positioned as star-crossed lovers in a way that's kind of like the Montagues and Capulets from Romeo and Juliet. And I like how that juxtaposition works.
Paul is so sweet. So his background is not fully fleshed out. We understand that his mom abandoned him. So wherever he's from, he might have been floating about. He comes to New York and is told by his aunt, because we hear a conversation, that he can stay with his sister. But when he gets to Port Authority and his sister's not, he assumes that she would have just like met him at the door when the train opens or the bus. he doesn't see her, so he has a picture of her on his phone and he's showing people, like, do you know my sister? Like, no, no, girl, no one at Port Authority in New York City recognizes this bland white lady. But he also explains that when his mom abandoned him, she left him a note, and he kept that note under his pillow until it disintegrated. So there's a scene when Paul is first hanging out with Y, where he offers her a cigarette and she's like, no, I'm trying to quit. I got these nicotine patches from Dwayne Reed for free. Do you want one? And she peels one off her body and places it on him. And then we see him hold on to that because there's a scene where he's in like a shower and it falls off and so he's been wearing it this entire time, even though they're only good for like 12 hours.
Yeah.
So he picks it up from the shower floor and puts it back on. I thought that was really sweet. There's also a scene where when he first goes to Y's apartment, and she says, help me take measurements. And because he seems so unaware of who she is authentically, because she even says that to him, like, look around, like, you need to open your eyes and, like, try to understand who I am. Like, it's so obvious. Because they're taking measurements, and her measurements are bigger than his. Like, her arm length, her chest, her, like, width. And then she measures his, and initially he gets freaked out, so she measures his chest and says like, oh, you're whatever, and he freaks out and leaves. So as the audience, I thought, oh, he understands that, you know, maybe she's trans, because there's the scene before that where they talk about Lee talks about how he has growth spurts and that one summer his fingers grew a lot, and then Paul and Y put their hands together and Y's hands are bigger than his. So I thought it was really sweet that he just seems so oblivious to, and again, it doesn't hurt that she's stunning. So, right. You know, and very passable. So, but I still really liked how that played out.
And there is some confusion about how we initially think that's when he has the thought that she might be trans. But I think that is more about his own baggage because he doesn't like to be touched. And there's another scene where Lee and his cronies like have this drunken girl give him a lap dance that he reacts negatively to, and I think it really is this person with abandonment issues, you know, it has trouble with intimacy.
There is a scene where I forgot what precipitated it, but he goes out into the street and asks strangers to like punch him and beat him up, and I didn't quite understand the function of that. Like, why did he want those people to hit him?
I'm trying to recall
wasn't it after he found out she was trans? You think about it. Okay, so some tense moments for me. Well, it's all tense, right? Because you know, the backdrop of like him living in this homeless shelter with all these super homophobic people, and then the danger of just being a trans woman walking these streets, creates a lot of tension. But when Paul breaks into his sister's apartment to pretend like he's living there because he's not telling why.
Who's played by Louisa Krause, by the way, his half-sister.
Oh, it's his half-sister. That stressed me out because I kept thinking, oh my God, this woman's going to walk in here and call the police, and then of course the black trans woman's going to get arrested or something. Like, I was so stressed out about it. So I was very happy when that didn't happen. When at the end, when Paul, did I mention the white boy realness?
No, not yet.
Oh.
That's the final scene.
At the final scene, when Paul wants to join the house, they say, okay, you have to explain why you want to be part of the house and show us your talent. So he explains, I want to care for people and have them care for me.
In whatever form that takes.
In whatever form that takes, which is a nod to like, I know that Y and I cannot be romantic. And then he says, my talent is white boy realness. Because they explain in the ball, like, people do voguing or face or body. And then at one point, Y says to Paul, you could do white boy realness, which is just him being himself, walking back and forth. I thought that was really sweet.
It is a nice moment to end on as well.
There's another scene where Paul is playing DDR with Lee, Dance Dance Revolution. And then there's another scene where we see him practicing his DDR steps. So I thought for sure this fool was going to do DDR steps.
I'm so glad he didn't.
But he did it. But it was really cute.
It was sweet. I also really like the name of Y as her chosen name, which is spelled W-Y-E. Because as a human who's questioned so much about herself and her identity, has fashioned herself a name that is a question. Yeah. It's her question out to the universe. And it also recalls the Bronski Beat anthem, Tell Me Why.
Such a good song.
Yeah.
My last final gripe would be the acting from some of the supporting cast is a little crunchy, specifically some of the members of the house. And why, I think she's a natural.
Leyna Bloom.
The actor playing Y, Leyna Bloom. But I think she has a range, and maybe because she's not as experienced, there is this, when she has to go outside of that range, it looked like she was straining a little bit, specifically when Paul confronts her about being trans and her reaction to him. And you brought up a good point. Like, it's interesting that a trans woman who's playing a scene having to explain herself as being a trans woman seemed a little off. But I think maybe she was pushed in a direction that didn't feel natural to her. Had she played it like how she actually would have responded, it would have been better.
Or maybe there was some tentativeness about pushing that on a trans performer.
Or that.
Because, that's there might have been some trepidation about that.
Sure. So that was the only moment when I thought, like, oh, maybe she needs to, she's still growing as an actor. But overall, I really, really liked the two leads.
Yes, it was shot by Jomo Fray, who shot Stella in the Spades. And the score from Matthew Herbert, who often works with Sebastian Lelio, I liked a lot. If you're into any kind of ballroom content.
If you like Pose.
Which Leyna Bloom is in two episodes of the last season of Pose. I don't think she has much to do.
If you watch Paris is Burning and liked it, if you like RuPaul's Drag Race, which stole everything from Paris is Burning, if you like those things, if you care about humanity and if you like love stories, yes. If you like to watch beautiful people.
If you I was going to say also shout out Legendary and
of course, Legendary.
The documentary Kiki from a few years ago as well. But
yes. So I think this is a movie for everyone.
I liked it a lot. I think we've come even from Leave It on the Floor from like 2011. Which had a lot, was focused on Black queer ballroom kids. Basically, I think we've come a long way even since then.
What would you give this film?
3 out of 5.
I would give it 3 out of 5 as well. Thank you.